Good morning, everyone. I want to start off this morning's morning message with a quote from Karl Marx from his book Capital. Commodity fetish is the original sin of capitalism. What did he mean by that? How does it resonate even today, over 100 years later? Well, the Oligarchy tour that Bernie Sanders is on represents that quite clearly, at least in my opinion. I'd like to explain a little bit why and how those two things go together, how those two things can't be separated from one another. When Marx talked about commodity being a fetish, I believe, and that why we are so invested in giving value to things that labor creates instead of giving the value to labor, that the capitalist class has talked us into believing that the items that we create have more value than the people who create them. And that's labor. That's us. Without labor, you have no capital. You have nothing to buy, nothing to trade. You have none of that. So we are where it begins. We are where it ends. And the capitalist class go out of their way to make you believe that the things you create, like a $38,000 Hermes Birkin bag, has more value than the people who created that bag. Labor. Labor is where it begins and ends. Now, how does Bernie Sanders factor into what Marx was talking about? Well, as I went to the event yesterday and I walked along the campus, I heard a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of chanting, a lot of joy, people talking about how this is our time and we're going to win and nothing's going to stop us, and Bernie is going to be the person to usher in this new time where we're not under the thumb of these horrible people who just keep extracting wealth from us with no consequence and no care for how it affects the larger world and the country specifically. That Bernie Sanders was going to be the person to do that. It was very ruckus. Once I got inside the stadium, people were chanting and clapping and screaming and just enjoying themselves completely. The people I was sitting next to, I heard some of them talking about how this was the time to take down the oligarchs, how they are too greedy and just completely out of control, and someone needs to rein them in, and that Bernie Sanders was that person to do it. Well, they introduced Bernie Sanders after a couple of people spoke and got the crowd really wound up and really, really excited. And I sat around and I watched. I used to be a Bernie Sanders supporter, very much so. Like many of you watching this right now, we were where those people are now, and we all know exactly how it's going to end. And as much as I wanted to tell them how it was going to end, I knew that even if I did, I would be considered a wet blanket. Let's put it that way. Somebody who just wanted to come and rain on someone's parade. Those people will find out, as we all now have found out, that the oligarch tour is basically to get ahead of the disappointment that is taken over the country as a result of unfettered, unchallenged greed and financial pain that people are feeling in the country. It was really the feel-good tour, in my opinion. Bernie Sanders got up and said as usual, we shouldn't have people, poor in this country, and the billionaires and the millionaires should pay their fair share. I'm so horrible at impressions. I think you kind of know that, but you've heard it all before. You don't need me to tell you. So, how does Bernie Sanders and what Marx was saying about the commodity and turning those into a fetish affect us as a country? Well, Bernie Sanders was sent out to let everyone know that they're going to be fighting for them, the proletariat, that they are going to speak for the proletariat, and they're going to wag their fingers at the oligarchs and say, cut it out. People need health care. They need a living wage. They need an education that they can turn into something real. They need to create a legacy. Capitalism does not allow you to create legacies. You're too busy fighting against it in order to build anything. You can't do both at the same time. Exhaustion will take over. So, commodity is the original sin of capitalism because it does not respect labor. It does not respect the people who create those things that the capitalists will then use to enrich themselves. And to be quite honest, it's really not their concern. They really don't care, because if they did, they would already be doing it. Bernie Sanders was there telling everyone that it was going to be the opposite of that. Instead of telling them the truth, as I heard it, I believe that if he had a strong message, a real message that was truthful and honest about the state of the political landscape of the country, those people would have been behind him, just as I was behind Bernie Sanders. But now that I have a clearer understanding of what it is the capitalist class really want from us, it's our job to defeat that by educating ourselves, joining groups that facilitate an education in what is really happening in the world, not the dribble that we were taught, I'm sorry to say, in school, the mythology of America, which was completely not true. We need to band together. We need to educate ourselves and stand up and educate others compassionately. I always say compassionately in these videos because there's no other way to get through to people. Compassionately and factually. That is the only way, at least that I know, of getting through to people who are completely wedded to the stories that they're told about how Bernie Sanders or AOC or any other politician is supposed to come in, swoop in, save the day, and get rid of the capitalist class that is oppressing you and stealing your wages and making it impossible for you to fulfill your dreams, to be happy, to have a home, to spend time with your children, to enjoy life. It doesn't have to be this way. It's just this way because the capitalist class creates situations, manufacture crises after crises that keep people unhappy, stressed, and wondering, will there be a better day tomorrow? And I believe the only way that can happen is if we join together, band together, join a group that is fighting for that tomorrow. Joining CPI is certainly, at least in my opinion, one of the strongest ways you can do that, because we are out in the street, we are active, we talk to strangers, and we talk to loved ones. The message is going to be the same. The proletariat, the laborers, the people who make shit happen are here in CPI and have yet to be in CPI. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to all of these morning messages. Some of the other ones are really, really good, very inspiring, very educational. Understand that you are worth having a better life it's hard to get there when you don't know what's going on. And in order to do that, you need to educate yourselves. And I'm hoping if you join CPI, we can get you there. Have a great day, everyone. Have a fabulous day.